Hey everybody, it's Brad with another FLORIANI Total Control U video for you today. And today we're going to do something kind of neat. We're going to be making our own custom 3D reverse embossing designs. Okay, and what I mean by that is this effect right here. We are going to be putting puffy foam into a shirt like this to create this 3D raised effect. Now there's other ways to do this other than using puffy foam, but that's the way that I'm going to show you. And this is a pretty easy project. So I actually am going to show you in person how to sew this out. But the meat of this is not the actually sewing it out part, it's the digitizing part. So we are going to be learning to do this with any font we want, any font that we can download, or it can be any shape or anything that we can draw, really. We can turn into this raised 3D effect of like a reverse embossing, where it's instead of like cutting in, it's puffing out, kind of like a trapunto effect, really. So how do we do? What we're going to do here is we're going to be working with a true type font, which those of you who have seen other videos that I've done may know where I'm going to go eventually with this to find our own custom fonts to do this with. But we're going to start with a font that's actually built into pretty much everybody's computer. I believe that the font that we're going to use here, everybody should have, no matter what version of Windows they're running. Where we're going to go, we're going to start up here in the text tool. We're going to kind of hover over it and this flyout menu will come out. We want this one, import TTF artwork. It's got a little arrow and an outline of the letter A. We're going to click on that. And then for the text, you can put in whatever word you want. It can really be anything. I'm just going to do, like my sample that I sewed out, I'm going to type in sassy in capital letters, SASSY, okay? And then for the font here, we're going to change it. We don't want Arial. We're going to hit select. And what I want you to do is scroll down. I'm just using my mouse wheel to scroll down here. And the font we're going to choose, there are many that would work for this. Cooper actually would work really well. But the font we're going to use is Impact. Everybody should have Impact. All right, so you just left click on Impact and then leave this on regular. You don't have to change the size and just hit OK. Okay, now once you've done that, this will say Impact. This will say whatever your word is. I'm going to say OK. And it'll bring your letters in. Now my letters came in white, which on a white background is not super helpful, so I'm going to change that so that we can actually see them. I just chose a color here. And then we also want to size these up. Now the foam that I am using is the Dime 3D Puff Foam, which comes in sheets that are 9 inches by 12 inches. So I know that my maximum width that I have to make these letters is going to be 12 inches. So I'm going to go up here to my transform properties. I'm going to set my width up here. Let's see, we'll put this into inches by right clicking on my ruler and changing this to inches. Okay, so I just right click on that ruler, choose inches. Then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to set this width. This one is set in millimeters too. There we go, we'll change that. I could have just changed it right here, I guess. So we're going to set the width here. Right now it's set to 1.95 inches. I'm going to set this to 11 and a half, which should give me enough wiggle room to have this as big as possible. And I'm just going to hit apply. And then once we've got this in, the next thing that we're going to want to do for this is uncheck the fill box, because we want these to be just outlines. It just makes it easier to see what we're doing. So I'm going to uncheck this fill box and hit apply. All right, and now we can see this is outlines. And what you want to do is any letter that is in your word, you're going to want to break apart if it has two pieces. Like this A has a hole in it in the middle here. And if we don't separate that hole from the outer part of the line, when we convert that to a stitch, it's going to cause a problem for us. So we need to make sure we separate that. So anything that's got a hole, letter G, letter O, anything like that in your particular word that you've chosen, you're going to need to break the center out. And the way you do it is you just go in and select the letter. So I'm going to left click on the letter, and then I right click and choose break apart. Okay, there's a keyboard shortcut for that, Alt-B if you prefer keyboard shortcuts. I usually right-click. I'm just going to choose that, and then we'll see in the sequence view over here that the center of the A is now a separate piece. It looks the same here because it's in the same place, but it is no longer considered part of this outer shape. So that's going to be the first thing you want to do when you bring this in. Now, before we go on, I want to explain kind of the way that sewing this out is going to go. The way that this sews out, you put the foam down on a piece of stabilizer, and then the first thing that's going to happen is a stitch needs to come down and tack down the inside of the letter so that when we cut the foam, okay, with another stitch is going to come in and cut the foam out, it doesn't have any chance of it shifting or moving at all. And then once we rip the excess foam away from the letters, the stitching that's on the inside is going to hold the letter down. We want that to sew out first, then we're going to digitize a cut line, and then there's going to be a final finishing stitch, okay? But we need to have a line that hugs the inside of our letter for each of these letters, except on holes in the letters, like in here, the stitching line needs to hug the outside edge of that. All right. Now, the software gives us a perfect tool for doing this. All right, it's called the contour tool, and that's what we're going to use to do it. And we're going to do it in 2 steps because, like I said, the letters that don't have a hole get the contour on the inside, and the holes get the contour on the outside. So what we're going to do is we're going to select, just go in and I've left-clicked on my first one, and then I'm going to hold the Control key on my keyboard, and then I'm going to select the rest of the letters, like that. Okay, we consciously did not select the hole here because that's going to get a different property. All right, so we've got these guys selected. We're going to go in and choose this button here. Contour is going to apply a contour to the selected path. All right, so we're going to left click on that. We want to choose inside for the contour type. This part just leave on miter, it's fine. And then for spacing, oh, you know what would actually help is if we had this set in metric for this. I'm going to cancel this. Just make sure we go up to the ruler, right click, and change my system unit from inches to metric. When you're dealing with small sizes, millimeters are easier. So we're going to go back up to our contour, and then let's see. So yeah, we want it on the inside, leave it on miter, ripples needs to be 1, do not remove selection, and change the spacing here to either 1 or 2 millimeters. I know when I actually sewed one of these out, I found that 2, you know, for some of the letters 2 worked a little better. But all the ones that I've sewn out thus far, I did at 1, and it worked. But anyway, so set this, maybe 2 is a better choice, you know, in retrospect. So set that to 2 millimeters and say, okay. What that does is it creates an inner line. See that? That goes and perfectly fits the contours of my letters. All right, now I also want to go in and change this new set that's just been created here. I want this new set of shapes to be a different color, just so that it's easy to switch between them. All right, so that is now a different color. And I want to go in, I'm just going to make it kind of an even more different color just so that it's dramatically different. And then I want to go to here where we've got my inner part. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to contour, and then we're going to set this to outside this time, and the same spacing, and say okay. That generates 1 for that, and then I'm going to take this and make it the same color. What was that color that I used here? This bashful pink here. You know what? I'm just going to select both of these and make them all one color. There we go. Now, another thing that we want to do is, before we go any further, is break up this text here. You see how this is all come in as one piece? We want to go in and break that apart as well. Okay, so that is fine. All of that is good. Now, the first thing that we want to sew out, remember, I said was the tack down. So we're going to need to change the order that these are going to go in. I'm going to select these. So I've just selected this color here, this sienna color. I'm going to right click that and move first. I know I'm going off the screen here, but here, let me do it over here. Move first, okay? That will make it so that this sews out first before anything else. And then this is going to be the next thing that sews out. Now, we're also going to want to have a finishing stitch, so we're going to have a third step, and that is going to be this exact same line will be the third line that gets sewn out. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 2, and then we need another one. So this we're going to just copy and paste. So right click, copy, right click, paste, and then pick a third color before you do anything else. That way everything is clearly delineated in colors, and we can go in and set what stitch properties we want for each piece. Okay, we're going to sew them all out the same color, right? We're making color stops here just to make it easier on ourselves. Okay, so we're going to go in here, take the first one. This we're going to set to just a normal default setting run stitch. So we go down here to this corner, left click on run, leave everything at the default settings. You don't need to do anything to that. That's going to work just fine. The second layer, this is going to be our cutting line. This is going to cut out the foam using the needle on the sewing machine. It's going to cut out the foam and allow us to rip the stabilizer away. If we don't have a cut line here, it's very difficult to pull your foam away from the stitching. So we're going to take this and we're going to make it a run, but we're going to change our stitch length to 0.3, okay, which is crazy close together. That is way too close together for normal use. You would never have a stitch length below, really, you don't want it below 1 millimeter, you know, and that's pretty low. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. But what we're doing here is not making a stitch you're going to see. We're making a stitch that's going to cut out the foam. All right, so we do that and we hit apply. All right, and then for our third layer, this we want to have pretty decorative stitches that are going to be bold and visible. And so what we're going to do is make this a bean stitch, and we're going to make it a slightly longer stitch length than the default. So we're going to choose the run stitch again. We're going to set our stitch length to 3 and hit apply. Then we're going to hit this tab here, the next one over, it's run extra if you hover your mouse over it. And we're going to go bean style, change that to bean, and leave everything else at the default and hit apply. And that is it. This is our design. This is everything that it takes to create the design. All right, and then we can go and sew the design out, which I'm going to do after I show you this next thing. We're going to actually sew the design out. So yeah, so that is all it takes. This we can file, save as, and off you go. Now, some important things to know about sewing on puffy foam is you are probably going to, if you're on a home machine, you're definitely going to want to raise your presser foot height a little bit, and so you may want to experiment to see what height works well for your machine. And if you're using a home machine, later in the video you're gonna hear me say to drop your tension. If you're using a home machine, the act of raising your presser foot drops your tension. Okay, you don't need to adjust your tension if you're using a flatbed home machine. At least a Baby Lock or Brother I know work that way. And also, it's very important that after you do the project that requires you to raise that presser foot height, that you go back into your settings in your machine and set it back to the default, because otherwise your tension will be wrong. Okay, that's an important thing to know. All right, now, so what I wanted to show you though, beyond how to digitize one of these, is how to get more fonts, because you know you only have so many fonts built in, and using a meme font like Impact is you know, not for everybody. So what if I want to have a different font? Well, where I recommend you go is a website called dafont.com, DAFONT.com, and this has a million free fonts to choose from. And the types of fonts that are easy to work with are fonts that are big and thick and fat, like the Super Friday font here. This would be easy to work with. But if you want to do something that is, you know, a little fancier, there's no reason that you can't. But just know that it will be easier to remove the stitching if you've got something that's big and thick and fat, not stitching, the foam, if you got something that's big and thick and fat like this, than if you've got something skinny like that. So let's say that we want to use this font here. Okay, we're like, oh, that looks nice. That's the one I want. If you go over here and click download, it's going to download the file. It's a zipped file, you just open that file. So here, I can just click on this in my downloads. I'm using, what am I using here? Internet Explorer, whatever that's called these days, Edge. But you just go to the zip file, click on it to open it. Let me fit this back in my screen here. And what you're looking for, sorry, I'm using like a window in window here. What you're looking for is either an OTF or a TTF file. You're going to double click that. And then, oh, what's it mad about? Is it going to make me extract this? I didn't think that it wouldn't make me extract it, but all right, let's see. Okay, yeah, it wanted me to extract it. So I think on my other computer, I could just double click this straight out of the zipped file, but I guess if it doesn't work to do that, click on extract all and just hit OK, and you'll get the actual extracted file here, which is what I did. So double click on the OTF file in the what gets extracted out of the zip, and then let me make this smaller again, and then just click on install here, right? So you're going to click on install, and that is going to put this font in your computer. You want to remember the name of it. Sweetie Rasty, okay, is the name of it. So we're going to minimize these and go back to FLORIANI. I'm going to make a new page and go into the TTF, and that was called Sweetie something. There it is, Sweetie Rasty, right? So I can say okay, and we can bring this in. Here, let me make it a color so we can see it. And then, let's see, that was what, 11.5? 11.5 inches that I made it. And then, so here we are, and now we go through the same procedure, and I've got a completely different font to do it in. And on this website, there are like an infinite number of fonts, no joke, right? So just this category here, curly, there are 20 pages of these. Okay, so this is just page 1. There are 20 pages of just this category. Now, what does not work is something like this, where there's like a bunch of crazy nonsense. You want to have a solid letter. Okay, so something else that wouldn't work would be something like this, Rio Grande. That would not work. This, where there's shading in there, that's not going to work. This Western Bang Bang, that's not going to work. Okay, Vanilla Whale, this would work. Eastwood, yeah. Road Store, Cowboys, all that stuff would work just fine. So all of these fonts, you can look through them and find ones that would work and use all of them. You can use any of these to do this technique. Okay, so anyway, yeah, just to show you real quick the rundown of how to do this again. Same thing, we're going to break this out of our A. Oh, this was why we wanted to have that be lines. And then we're going to take the whole, these guys that aren't part of a hole, we're going to do contour on the inside, 2 millimeters, say okay. And then this one, we're going to do contour outside, okay. All right, and then we're going to take this and this are our contours that we made. We're going to make them a different color. And then we're going to break this apart. Oh, just the top one. Break this apart. Oh, you can't see. Well, just the way that my screen is set right now, you can't see. I'm right-clicking this, and then I'm moving down, and I'm hitting break apart so that all breaks up. Then we want all the pink to be first, so we're going to go in here and do move first. This needs to be a standard run stitch. Boom. Next step, we want to copy and paste so that we've got 2 of them, and then make that a different color so that we can easily see them. Second is going to be our cut stitch, so we're going to do run, set the stitch length to 0.3, and then for this one we set to a run, set the stitch length to 3, hit apply, run extra, change the bean style to bean, and hit apply. And there we have, this is one that we just downloaded this font from the internet and created our own custom embossed design out of it. Okay, now I'm going to show you now. I filmed earlier how to sew one of these out, so now you can watch and see how that works. There's other videos on YouTube that are probably better than mine because I'm terrible at actually getting things straight on shirts. But you can watch the rest of this, and we'll show you how you actually apply this to a shirt. So. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you learned stuff and you enjoy it. I'll see you next time. Okay, so in order to do this project, you're going to need a couple of things that you probably already have. One is a fusible mesh cutaway stabilizer. This particular one is a Quilter Select cutaway fusible, but really any cutaway fusible stabilizer that is, the roll is wider than the hoop you're going to use is going to work just fine. So as long as it's a fusible mesh. Now, you could probably do this with a good sticky stabilizer in the hoop too. So if you watch this video and you're like, I'd rather use a sticky stabilizer, go ahead, that would probably work for the in the hoop part. And then you're also going to need some foam. So I have here, this is the original Sulky Puffy foam. I also have some 3D puff foam that's put out by Dime that comes in these bigger sheets. These are the biggest sheets that I have available, that I have here in the store. We sell these in a pack for $15.99. And I'm going to use these because I want to do something big, and my puffy foam that I sell only comes in these small pieces. So that's what I'm going to be using. But you need some kind of 3D foam. EVA foam does actually work. I've actually done projects like this using up to a 6mm thick EV foam. Now, I wouldn't try using that on a home machine. If you've got an industrial machine, though, you can adjust the foot and the tension enough to make that work. But for the purposes of this project, we're going to be using 2mm, or is it 3mm? 3mm, I'm sorry. We're using 3mm, that's how many millimeters thick foam for our project. Now, you're also going to want some basic sewing supplies. You're going to want to have like a marking tool. You're going to need a shirt to do this on. And you also are going to need a steam iron for the fusible. But that's basically it. You don't really need anything special other than the foam. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to hoop up our fusible stabilizer here. I'm just going to cut out a chunk of it and put that in my hoop like this. And the only thing that's going to actually get hooped is the stabilizer. Okay, everything else floats in this project. And by float, I mean it's not going to get pressed into the hoop here. That is why we are using a fusible here, so that we can fuse our shirt to this stabilizer. All right. Now, what we want to do is we want to get our piece of foam that we're going to use. I'm just going to use this dark blue piece of foam. It's a dark blue shirt that I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly matching at all. Really, it's just if it's a light color shirt, you want to use a light color foam. Dark color shirt doesn't really matter, actually. So anyway, I'm just going to take this, and my foam just happens to fit perfectly within the hoop that I'm using without wanting to shake or move around at all, just because of the shape of it and the shape of the hoop. But if your piece of foam isn't anywhere near the size of your hoop, you can use some embroidery tape or just some carpenter painter's tape would work just fine to hold it down onto your stabilizer. So once you've got this down, this can go straight on the machine. All right, now I'm going to be doing this on my absolute favorite new machine, the Bernina E16 Pro. I'm doing it on this because I want to use the free arm, which is going to make it easier to put the shirt on here, and it's my favorite machine to use. If you have a flatbed machine, it's definitely that, meaning a machine that's not like a multi-needle, that is like a home embroidery machine. It's going to be more challenging because you have to get the back of the shirt out of the way, and I don't want to have to deal with that. And I have access to a 16 needle, so why wouldn't I just use it? So anyway, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to have this start my design, and I don't need to be involved in the first part of the design. But if you are using a multi-needle, you do need to make sure that you set the machine to stop, and I can do that on my machine, to stop before the last color. You only want it to sew out
the first 2 color changes in your design. Okay, that way we can go and do the stuff that we need to do before we sew out the last color, which is going to actually sew the shirt to the foam. I'm just going to go ahead and run this, and then while this is running, I'm going to move over and we'll start doing the next part of our prep work. So I'm going to start the embroidery on here, and off it goes. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fuse another piece of this fusible stabilizer to the inside of my shirt. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep the front of the shirt from buckling as the stitches go in and hold it down. I found that in my first one of these that I tried, this one, I found that the shirt buckled all around the outside edge of the letters, and you see in here, especially inside of the A. And so for my second attempt, I did it with a fused piece of stabilizer inside the shirt. It took care of all of that. Just so you can see the difference. It made a humongous difference. So the inside of my A is perfect, and I don't have that warping around my letters like I did in the first one. So I highly recommend taking a piece of fusible stabilizer and fusing it to the inside of your shirt. That's what I'm going to do now. It would help if my shirt was inside out for me to do this, huh? Got to remember which side's the fusible side. If you look at the stabilizer, you can kind of see these little crystals that are there on one side and not on the other. If you're ever looking at a piece of fusible, like, wait, which side is the fusible? Look at it close and you can see kind of little crystals. That's the glue. And I'm just going to lay this in. This is way, way, way more than I need, by the way. I have a habit of using way more than I need of stuff because I don't pay for it. Don't tell my mother that. All right, so I'm using the iron here. I'm using a steam iron. I'm just going to fuse this stabilizer to the shirt. I don't have to go crazy with this, but I do want it to be fused, so I'm using steam. And then we're going to leave it alone for a little while. Just, you know, a few seconds or so. Just want to make sure that it's stuck to it. I'm never sure, and then I overdo it, and then it's hard to remove. I'm just not a real sewer, you know? Okay, that's stuck pretty good, so I'm going to turn it right side in. And then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of mark roughly where the center of the back of the shirt is, just so that I kind of have a reference for when I am putting the shirt onto the hoop. So let's see. There's the tag. Let's say that's the center, and I'm not being real scientific here. We'll say somewhere around there is where I'm going to be aiming for, just so that I've got like a frame of reference, you know. Okay, so it's done sewing, and we can see that it has done both the tack down stitch and the cutting stitch, no problem. And now, because that cutting stitch was such a short stitch length, I'm able to easily just pull the foam away. If you do it without having that cutting stitch, it is much, much harder to pull your foam away. So that's why we did that, where we copied and pasted the design and did the contour. Yeah, and it came out perfectly reasonably, I think. If you look closely, you can see that my contour is really close to my cutting stitch. So if you want to, if you're worried about the foam coming loose, what you could do is set that inner contour to 2 millimeters instead of 1. You know, just looking at this, I'm like, yeah, I could see setting that a little bit more inset, but I also think that it's perfectly fine, especially because like parts of it you know, it's not as close. I don't think that that's going to come out of there at all, and everything will be just fine. But you can see that this just pulls right out. Now, it's better not to do it on the machine here. I'm going to take this over to the desk and pull the foam away. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to do that. Okay, so now I'm just going to pull my foam away from my cutting stitch. And this is just a matter of kind of gently tugging. You don't want to be so rough with it that you mess the stabilizer up and pull it in the hoop at all, which, I mean, you'd have to try pretty hard to do that. But if you did it, then it would ruin the whole thing. So just, be aware that you don't want to lose the stabilizer out of its position within the hoop, because if you did that, this particular one would be done, I think. So I'm just going and peeling this out, and if you had like a little weeding tool like that you use with heat transfer vinyl or anything like that, that might make this a little easier. But with big giant letters like this, it's not hard. This could be challenging if I went and, like I showed you on that DeFont site where you can go and get all kinds of different fonts. If I picked a font that was, like really, really fancy and had a lot of decorations and stuff in it, like little, like swirlies with little teeny tiny details, that is going to make your weeding of this much more challenging. So I do recommend, when you are first starting doing this, to stick with a bold block font like this one. That's why I did Impact, because it's such a big, bold font, and everybody has Impact on their computer. So I know you're going to be able to do the exact same thing with the exact same results, regardless of what computer system you're using or anything like that. So, okay, so we've weeded out all of the excess here. Keep this, okay, because chunks of this can still be used. But we're now going to put the shirt, we're going to put this in the shirt and then fuse it. So that's why we used a fusible here. Fuse the shirt to this, okay? That's what's going to carry the shirt. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to put the sleeves, I'm going to put these connection points where it connects to the machine through the sleeves. Here's where, if you're doing it on a home machine, a flatbed machine, you're going to have a harder time, because you're going to have to kind of turn the whole shirt inside out around it, just like doing any embroidery. But it's just an extra, it's an extra step, and that's why I'm doing it on my 16 needle, because like I'd rather have a free arm for this. Anyway, let's get started. All right, so more or less, I'm just going to stick this in here. No two ways about it. I'm just sticking this up inside the shirt. So I am bringing this up, and this is a small shirt, which is why we are not going to ever use this shirt, and why it's okay that I'm embossing sassy on all these shirts, because we don't have anybody here that would wear a small shirt. So that is why I'm using such a tiny shirt. So my hoop actually has marks on it where I can see where the center of the hoop is, and I'm just lining up my crosshair roughly with that. Again, I'm not super worried about having this perfectly super duper straight or anything, because again, I'm just showing you the technique rather than really worrying about it being perfect. So I can feel my letters are actually lower than the center of my crosshair in here. And with this shirt, I can't really get it any higher up in there. So I mean, it's going to have to be lower than my crosshair is. That's fine. Now I'm going to use my iron and just go ahead and get this shirt fused. Now where it's important is all around this outside, because remember, you're not going to be fusing to these letters. There's no actual fusible there. So we want to go to the corners of the hoop. And I'm going to hit it with a little bit of steam. If there's any water left in this. Oh, there's barely any water left in this thing. That's all right. We're getting a little bit of steam here. And we're just go ahead and getting this nice and stuck. And so when I did this without having fused some stabilizer to the shirt beforehand, this was all getting wrinkly as I was doing this, and I was like, oh, that's not going to be good. But I went ahead and did it anyway just because I just wanted to see what would happen. But it's kind of a happy thing that I did that, because now I know, definitely use the fusible. Like, it's not a mystery. What happens if you don't? What happens if you don't is it doesn't work right. So that is something you can take with you. I'm probably overdoing. I always do. I always overdo the ironing. But there we go. So we're going to just let that kind of cook for a second, and then we're going to load it on the machine. Okay, so I'm back over here by the machine. I'm going to feed the neck of the shirt over the free arm, and then I'm going to expose the hoop connection to the machine from inside the sleeve. I'm going to get one started and then go and do the other side here. Just slide these in until everything clicks into place. And then once I've got them clicked in, then I am going to maneuver the sleeves so that they are out of the way of the embroiderable area. And you might want to use some kind of clip or magnet or something if your design goes all the way to the edge of your shirt. You might want to have some clips holding these back. On my first attempt at this, I ran over one of those sleeves, and now there's a hole in the shirt. So you don't want that. It would probably be a good idea to run a trace. You know, like on most machines, you can set, okay, let's see how far over to the left it's going to go. Let's see how far over to the right it's going to go, etc. Although I said those backwards from what I'm actually doing, I can see, okay, so yeah, I'm not going to run into anything that's on the fabric here, so I don't have to worry about that. And now I basically am ready to go ahead and start the sewing. So let me get to where I'm ready to start. And remember, this third color is going to ride in the same part of the, it's going to be in the same spot as our cutting stitch, okay? So this is going to hit right in the same spot where the cutting stitch is, which will kind of stretch the shirt around the foam. And the thicker the foam that you're using, kind of the more pronounced the effect will be. So if you're using 2mm foam, it's not going to be as nice as this. If you got 4mm foam, it'll look a little nicer. Like I said, I've done puffy foam projects with up to 6mm foam, which is ridiculous. Look at this. This is 6mm foam. Can you see that? Yeah, that's like super, super thick. So I did this just to see whether it would work. And that wasn't with foam that was made to be used for embroidery. That was with like EVA foam for like making costumes and stuff. See that there's like a little bit where this shirt is buckled over here. I hope that doesn't cause me a problem. We'll see. I mean, you know, if it, like a little bit where something gets stretched out or whatever, or there's a buckle, I'm not really that worried about that. This is just to show you the steps, right? And I'm not a great sewer. So if I do it a little bit wrong, you know, that's fine. I'm just showing you the order and the steps. So let's go ahead and hit that last sew out here. Okay, it's done. I can just take it right off of the machine, and then we'll go back over to my cutting table. All right, so at this point, all we're doing is we're just going to pop this hoop, loosen the screw on it here. Okay. Oh, looks like my hoop is fused together. That's all right. Not a problem. Where are my scissors? I'll just trim it. So the stabilizer can all be cut. I mean, it just fused to itself and wrapped itself around the hoop. Get that hoop out of the way. And now we're just cutting these. We're going to unfuse this, and you can see that, yeah, I fused it way too hard. You can tell by how hard it is for me to peel this back. So that means that I used the iron for too long on the fusible. It's not a huge deal. It's just way more than I needed to get it like a good fuse. And if you do that on some fabrics, it'll stretch it and leave puckers. So this fabric is fine. Just something to be aware of if you're not used to working with fusibles. I so rarely actually sew stuff out these days that like I'm always second guessing myself for how long to do things. All right, here we go. Cut out my 2 layers of stabilizer out of here. And some things that would make this easier, if I had like a clamp hoop where I didn't have something that connects to the ends of this, which, you know, there's lots of those on the market. That would make it easier. I just don't have one open, and I didn't want to open one, so I figured I'd just show you the one that basically any multi-needle, you'd be able to do it that way, the way that I just did it. Oh, and I didn't talk about tension, but when you're sewing on the foam, you do want to drop your tension a little bit on most machines, and I did. I didn't do it on camera, but I did. I told the machine how thick the fabric was, is basically how on that machine you adjust your tension. And but yeah, if you're using like a baby lock or a brother 10 needle, just give it a couple of screws to the lefty loosey on your upper tension for the color that you're doing this on, because especially if you're using thicker than 3mm foam, it will make a real big difference. Like that 6mm foam, whew, yeah, it needs to be real loose for that. And that's so that enough thread comes out for how thick the foam is. All right, so that's good enough for me. Let's turn it right side in and see how I did. So here we go. We got our sassy shirt here. And there it is. It is definitely crooked. But like I said, I wasn't trying to be perfect for that. The whole point here is to show you the technique. Just because I'm a lazy, bad embroiderer doesn't mean that you should be. But you can see the 3D of it, how it's embossed in there. And that is pretty cool, I think. And so the reason that I did this was just so that I could show you how to actually sew this out. But with the technique that I show you in the software part of this video, you can make letters that look like anything. And I mean, it doesn't have to be letters. You could do like a cool embossed logo of something if you had a logo that, you know, would work for that. That is something that you could totally do. So remember, you want to use thicker, bolder fonts. Makes it a lot easier to weed the stuff out. If you do a narrow font, don't say I didn't warn you that it was harder and it didn't come out quite as good. But I mean, do it. You know, try it and see what it looks like. Yeah, so that's it. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you make lots of cool embossed fonts for yourself to play with. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.